All right. Well, welcome to Fall Bible Study back in session with Professor Blumenthal at your service. Gary's been great. Thank you for again offering to teach. And I know this is about a 5-week, 7-week series. And Joseph. So good things. I just want to say hello and just briefly say hi and thank you for being in the Word. It's so important that we're studying God's Word. And this is a good group. You guys, enjoy each other and being together. And I know that Gary always has good things that we can hear and receive as he's preparing. So, but let's pray and just invite the Lord to bless this time. Lord, thank you for these new seasons, for this fall season, and for the renewal, coming back to be with you and be in your word and with your people. So bless this time, bless Gary as he teaches and as he gives us this good words about Joseph's life and faithfulness, and mostly your faithfulness through all times to your people. So bless this time and the word as it's shared and discussed and studied in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So thanks. Have a great study.
Thank you, John.
As usual, right on time.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for showing up again in my class. Appreciate that. So hopefully we all can learn some new things from Joseph's story. And it's not Joseph in the New Testament, Joseph and Mary. It's in the Old Testament, Genesis. So yeah, we've been doing a lot of studying in the New Testament, so I felt that maybe something in the Old Testament would be good for us. So on your table is an outline. So I've kind of put it on 2 pages. If you want to take notes, that gives you a little bit of space to do that. It's up to you. There's readings for each lesson, so I am not going to read the story in class because we only have 45 minutes and there's a lot of stuff to cover in this story. And I want to apologize ahead of time too that I'm going to have to kind of rush through and just highlight a few different things. But your assignment is, and it would be helpful, if you read ahead each week, the texts that are listed there, so that you're familiar with the story. We get to class, then we can just kind of highlight it. We don't have to read a lot of it. All right? It's interesting how the Joseph story in the Old Testament and Genesis takes up almost a quarter of the book of Genesis, from chapter 30 on through chapter 50, the end of chapter 50. And it's just a fascinating story. Oh, there's so much in it and just so many good truths and really, in a sense, that Joseph's life kind of mirrors the lives of us today, too. We have our ups and downs, our challenges, and just those times of testing of our faith and our relationship with the Lord. So anyway, it's a story that's just a reminder of the power of faith and the importance of just trusting in God and every day, no matter what happens to us. So God uses the lives and experiences of biblical characters to teach us, to encourage us, and to warn us in different ways. Now, you think of all the faith stories lived out in the lives of David, Esther, Moses, Jonah, Peter, Paul. I mean, all of those biblical characters and their biographies that distill those deep truths, those lessons of faith, and they reveal God's faithfulness into the fabric of everyday living of us human beings and as his people. So the Joseph story in Genesis is really no different. So what is the first thing that comes to mind when you think about Joseph? Maybe from, Sunday school lessons or maybe studies later in life. What are some of the things you remember? The robe, yeah, very important. Yep. The multicolored tunic or robe, that's right. Anything else?
Thrown into the pit.
Thrown in the pit. Yep, yep.
Sold as a slave.
I'm sorry?
When he was sold.
Sold into slavery, yeah, yep. All right. Anything else?
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness, yes. Finally, his brother showed up in Egypt, and not revenge, but forgiveness. Yeah,
In spite of injustice, Joseph's character shone through both Potiphar's house and in Pharaoh's
yes,
house.
yes. We really see the true colors of his character in through all the challenges and ups and downs. Yeah, very good.
Started out as a bit of a
Yeah, some ways, yes. Yeah. All right.
I got this tree.
Yeah, so the Joseph story is, you might say, kind of a rag to riches story in a sense. I mean, he was just a typical ordinary teenager. His father and his family were sheep herders, and that's the way life was. But again, it's a story that's filled with passions of love and hate, ambition and glory, separation and loneliness, jealousy, deceit, betrayal, forgiveness, all the way from slavery to a position of power. And it was quite a journey for him.
For us, we can note that even injustice can be part of God's plan
Yes,
for the community, not just us.
correct. Very, very true. That's very true. Let's take a quick look at the name of Joseph. Anybody know what it means? It's mentioned, the name Joseph is mentioned 200 times in the Bible, of different people. Of course, there's Mary and Joseph, and then the story in Genesis and so on too. What it means is he will add. He will add, or you might say to increase. And the word he here refers to what? There's a spelling in the Hebrew in the Old Testament. This is a theophonic name, which means that it incorporates God, or we might say Jehovah. The Jeho, God will increase, God will add. And we see how that plays out in Joseph's life. It's the idea of growth, expansion, abundance, prosperity. Joseph is a good and moral character. He's not revengeful, even though he could have been in all of the different situations he faced. But he finds success through every oppression. And that, again, just kind of clarifies his character as we go through the story. So we see how God will add to his life. He'll strengthen his faith, responsibilities, power in the end, and just so many ways. So before we get acquainted with Joseph, I just want to share kind of just some background information that I think can help us to understand better who Joseph was and the family that he came out of. So a brief outline would look something like this. From birth to 17 years, which is in Genesis 30 through 37:2, Joseph's family is in transition. It's unsettled, they're on the move, and there's some family dynamics that are beginning to clash. And all of a sudden you see some of these roots of jealousy, hatred, and dysfunctionalism that are starting to come into the family or are part of the family dynamics. And then from 17 to 30 years of his life, from Genesis 37:2 to 41:6, Joseph reaches manhood. And it seems like his life is out of control at this time. There's sold into slavery. There's unfair accusations. He's imprisoned for many, many years. And so this is a significant time of transition for him. And then from 30 years to his death, which is in Genesis 41:46 through the end of chapter 50, we see the prosperity of God's blessings that comes into his life. There's forgiveness, not revenge, for his brothers. He becomes Pharaoh's right-hand man and oversees a significant time of famine for the people. So that's kind of a brief outline of as we take a look at the life of Joseph. Now, the home of Joseph was anything but a place of refuge or shelter, of peace and quiet and tranquility. It was somewhat dysfunctional. Now, we may have this picture or image of Joseph, I mean, this cute little kid grew up and, he was good looking and he had all these abilities. He was his father's favorite son and so on. And, life was all well. No. Let's back up a little bit. The father of Joseph was who? Jacob. Jacob, right. Whose name means what? Chiseler, deceiver. But he was later given the name of Israel, which means in praise of God. So we see how Jacob's character early on, remember what happened between him and his brother Esau? He cheated his brother out of the birthright. He deceived his brother. Anyway, and also there was some conflict between him and Laban, his father-in-law, later on. But Jacob had two wives, right? Leah and Rachel. And you remember the story, how he had to work for 7 years thinking he was going to get Rachel. And when he worked for Lebanon deceived him. So he had to work another 7 years. He ended up marrying Leah, and then he finally married Rachel. So Leah and Rachel were sisters. And there was some childbearing competition that caused rivalry between them, and it also involved their handmaiden Biliad, a concubine. So when you add all of this up in terms of their family, one husband, two wives, two concubines, 4 mothers, 11 sons, and 1 daughter. Do you think this resulted in marital bliss in that home? Imagine the dynamics that were going on. But by this time, Jacob, now as we pick up in the story, he was an aging man when Joseph was born. Jacob had worked for his father-in-law, Laban, for 20 years. And so because there was this increased infighting between them and deception from both sides, Jacob decided to pick up his family, move back to Canaan, to his homeland. However, on the way back, Diana, Leah's daughter, was raped by the Hittites in Shechem. And in revenge, her brothers devised a plan and proceeded to kill every male in Shechem and then loot the town. And Jacob's reaction to all of this? So what? okay, very passive. And he really, yeah, it's kind of like boys will be boys, and so you let it pass.
That was the normal justice.
Yeah, right, yeah,
You break my finger, I
right,
break your head. That's why God's law limited that.
yeah. Another thing that happened, before they arrived in Canaan, Rachel died giving birth to Benjamin, Joseph's brother. So there was grief in the family. Another aspect of grief, a big loss for Jacob, because Rachel was his favorite wife, very endeared to her. And Joseph was Jacob's favorite son because he loved Rachel. Then a third tragedy happened. Reuben, the oldest of the family, committed incest with one of his father's concubines. So, what did Jacob do about that? Nothing. They let things go on as if nothing happened. Instead of an exciting and uplifting trip home, it was filled with grief in many ways. And then a final blow. After reaching Canaan, word came that Jacob's father, Isaac, died. More grief. So you kind of can get a feel of what was going on in the family here. Jacob kind of being passive, his sons kind of doing their own thing, and again, it was not a very functional family in some ways. So this is the cloud that was kind of hanging over the Joseph story. There was emotional bruises, unresolved conflicts, there were heavy hearts. And yet in the midst of all this, Jacob found some stability, some comfort, you might say an oasis. And it's found in Genesis 37:3. Now Israel, remember this is Jacob's new name. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age. And he made a richly ornamented robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. So you see what's beginning to happen here in the family already. Yeah. Now Jacob was not subtle in his affection for Joseph, pretty much put in plain sight. And doting on Joseph may have given Jacob a refreshing outlook on life, but it ended up bringing more dark clouds on Joseph's life. And the tipping point was a certain robe. It finally triggered a negative reaction from the brothers. Now, this beautiful colored robe was a long-sleeved garment. Kind of went down to the knees, very decorated, very colorful, and it was worn by the nobility of the day. A symbol of authority and favored position in the family. It meant that Joseph would receive the birthright, inherit a double portion of the estate. And it excused him from the menial tasks of those farming chores. How do you think this went over with his brothers? Right. And so for Joseph, the robe was a no-win situation. If he didn't wear the robe, he would disappoint his father. If he wore the robe, it would remind his brothers that he was set apart. He was to be in a better position in the family, a position of authority. So, what were the results? You can kind of see it. There was this resentment, despised Joseph. It kind of began to increase in anger. proceeded to hatred or to bitterness, jealousy, and ended up as hatred. And because brothers felt rejected in some ways by their father because of his favor on Joseph. So this hatred then dug in deeper when Joseph related to them, hey guys, I had a dream. And the first dream was that basically saying, I will be your ruler someday. Whoa, here's this young brother, second youngest in the family, and yeah. So why would Joseph even tell his brothers about this dream? Did he feel led, that it was inspired by God himself and he just felt free, he needed to share it? Was it out of pride? Or was it saying, hey, yeah, see, I'm better than you guys, and this kind of proves it? Well, that didn't help the situation.
Makes me think that at this point, Joseph, as the immature guy, wasn't really any better in character than his brothers.
Yeah, yeah,
I get back at it. I had this dream. You're going to be my servant.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, and he kind of, didn't have to get involved in the family chores. He can help dad with his business dealings, kind of a couch potato sort of thing, and not out there working alongside of his brothers. And now,
It could be, maybe, that he was a bit spoiled.
yeah, yeah,
Maybe.
maybe. We don't know for sure, but yeah,
Got cured of that.
right. So, not really soothing the hatred, Joseph did what? Hey guys, I had another dream. When everyone in the family will be bowing down to me. Oh boy.
What do you want to do?
And that didn't go over any better. It just fueled the hatred all the more. And passive Jacob, because of his fondness for Joseph, he did nothing to assuage the jealousy and the bitterness that was driving a wedge between Joseph and his brothers. And in a sense, he ignored that thunder of the storm that was coming.
Let's say his father kept the matter in mind.
He did. He probably thought about it, but he didn't
Didn't do it.
act on it. Right, right. So, yeah. Well, the brothers too. I mean, whoa, what do you mean? You know?
I expect the brothers
Yeah,
to, if I had said something, they didn't do anything.
yeah. So, anyway, we find out here, Jacob, he did not even see the danger of sending Joseph in one day to check up on his brothers. Hey, Joseph, take some snacks, go see how your brothers are doing, and see if they're, taking care of the family flock near Shechem. So Joseph put on his robe, took off, and went towards Shechem and met a stranger. And the stranger says, "Who are you? What are you looking for?" "I'm looking for my brothers, so and so." "Oh, they're over by Dothan." So Joseph heads over there to see his brothers. And the brothers see Joseph coming with his colorful tunic, blowing in the breeze, So immediately they huddled and quickly decided to vent their built-up hatred and bitterness, just as they had done to those men in Shechem who violated their sister. And we read in verses 37:18. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them there at Dothan. But they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. "Here comes the dreamer boy," they said to each other. "Come on now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what becomes of his dreams." So what turned out to be just a straightforward assignment from his father, it turned into a murderous plot by his brothers. However, Reuben, the oldest in the family, Joseph's big brother, intervened and convinced the others to put him in a dry water cistern instead of killing him. I wonder why he felt kind of a soft-hearted need toward Joseph at this time. Maybe he felt it would, how would that affect his father killing his favorite son? What kind of conflict would that cause in the family, or more divisions, or whatever? So Reuben's tender-hearted, wanted to take Joseph back to his father. So the brothers then decided to sit down, have a little meal, and discuss what they should do and how they should proceed. Meanwhile, they stripped off Joseph's beautiful coat, threw him into the cistern, and waited. So what do you think Joseph was feeling at this time? Half naked, rejected by his brothers. I mean, what do you think was going on through his mind?
Dreams weren't true.
Yeah. Yeah, what about those dreams I had now? Yeah. Maybe he was thirsty. Maybe a little hungry. What kind of pain did Joseph feel? I don't mean the stub your toe kind of pain, but just the hatred, the rejection. I don't know what kind of words his brother said to him to show their hatred or to degrade him. Anyway, while the brothers were eating, they saw a passing caravan of Ishmaelites. So they decided, let's bargain with them. And they ended up selling Joseph to these slave traders. And they were probably thinking, great, gone, out of sight. We don't have to deal with Joseph anymore. So then they killed a goat, poured the goat's blood on Joseph's tunic, and then they took it back, deceived their father Jacob, convincing him that Joseph was killed by a wild animal. So Joseph, rejected by his brothers, stripped, naked, sold, never to return to his family. And Joseph had only begun to experience life's dark and unsettling events in his life. And there seemed to be no justice in sight. Now, for the next 22 years, the brothers then will have to live with a lie that they told their grieving father. And you wonder if they had any thoughts about Joseph, wondering where he ever ended up, whatever happened to him. Maybe they had to bury their guilt. Maybe they continued to harbor that bitterness they had towards Joseph. We don't know. But for 22 years, they had to deal with that situation and those memories. But little did they know they were playing right into the hands of God. So what do we learn from this story so far? Unchecked emotions can quickly lead to harmful, sinful behavior. And no wonder there are many biblical passages repeatedly warning us of the danger of unchecked anger, jealousy, bitterness, and conflict. Bitterness and hatred, it doesn't always lead to murderous intentions or actions. But if unresolved, the inevitable manifestations will be just a calloused heart, that's sinful actions, absence of love and forgiveness. Now, we can't control all that happens to us in life, but we can choose, we can control how we will respond. So, bitterness. Joseph's brothers expressed a lot of it. Bitterness is a spirit of irritability that keeps one in perpetual animosity, making for a sour and a venomous heart. To me, that's a good definition. Let me say that again. Bitterness is a spirit of irritability that keeps one in perpetual animosity, making for a sour and venomous heart. Now, bitterness can devastate one spiritually. In a sense, it's a walk in the flesh, not a walk in the Spirit of the Lord. It can slowly eat up one on the inside, causing one just to focus on the bad. And it can affect one physically, resulting in discouragement, stress, depression. It's like a poison, in a sense, preventing a healthy living. And it can affect relationships, ruin relationships. It can taint them, hurt them, destroy them if that bitterness continues. So how does one remove that bitterness in their lives? Forgiveness. Forgiveness. Forgiveness really offered by Christ. It's been given to us. And that forgiveness, we need to take it. We need to apply it to our own lives. We need to share it. We need to allow Christ to remove it. One of the scripture passages that can help us with that is from Hebrews chapter 12, verse 15. Hebrews 12, 15, where it says, "See to it that no one misses the grace of God, and that no bitter root grows up to cause trouble and defile many." So again, it's just one of those passages that can help us to overcome the bitterness that may be in our people's lives. Another thing I want to bring out is that, we all go through difficulties in life. Anybody here that has never faced a difficulty, a disappointment? Raise your hand. One, we got one. All right. Yeah. No, that's just the nature of our human life, unfortunately. No, sometimes we feel rejection. Sometimes we feel the hatred of others or criticism, or there's things that happen in life that we didn't expect. And it can bring a lot of pain in relationships or loss of a loved one, health issues, or, economic ruin or whatever. That's just the way life is for us. Yeah. And so it's easy, for us sometimes then to focus on, well, why me? Poor me. I don't deserve this. Where was God when I needed him? That's some comments that I've heard often over my years of ministry. And in a way, it's okay to raise those kind of questions, I feel. But it can turn into being a negative approach to life, too, if that's what we only focus on. Poor me, why me? And I think it's helpful to turn that around and to have a positive attitude and outlook on life. And we see this in Joseph, don't we? But we will see it more and more. So the positive outlook is maybe God is trying to get my attention. It's a wake-up call. Maybe he's giving me time to this hard time or experience to grow up, to change, so I can be ready to do what he has in mind for me, for his purposes and his plans. It can be in those times too that forces us or encourages us to be reminded of his assuring love for us and his presence in our lives in the midst of those challenges or hardships. It's those things that can help us to turn to him for strength and support and guidance. And knowing that there can be blessings, there can be good things that can come out of this. I know a lot of people who often said to me or approached me and said, why did God let this happen? Why me? And I said, well, that's one approach you can take. But I think a more positive approach is, okay, God, where do we go from here? What are the blessings in this? What do I need to learn or change? I need you to walk with me through this time. So that, to me, is more helpful for our spiritual life and our relationship with the Lord. And so those difficulties can help us to refocus. Sometimes just self-examination, and it can strengthen our character and our faith. There's another verse in James chapter 1 that speaks to this. James 1, verses 2 and 4. Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking in anything. So you see that, again, that just reminds us we don't have to go through those kinds of hardships like Joseph alone. God is with us. And we can be assured that God has a definite purpose behind everything that happens to us in our lives. We may not understand it or realize it at the moment, but we need to be open to the blessings and what God is doing for us and through us in those hard times. But there are times God has to hammer out our characteristics and our faith that he desires in our lives on the anvil of adversity. What was God's purpose in allowing Joseph to be put into the cistern? Did God have some things he wanted to perfect in Joseph's life? God made a promise, and he wanted to keep it. And through Joseph, he keeps his promise to preserve the people of Israel. As you remember, finally at the end of the story, Joseph rose to power. His family moved down from Canaan, and for the next 450 years, the Israelites lived in Egypt. So we begin to discover from Joseph's experiences, God does not always make everything turn out the way we want it to. We also learn that God's love is deep and strong enough to hold on to you and me and to never let us go. Joseph experienced that. And we'll see how that plays out more and more in his life. And God's promise is that he will always be with us in all of our ups and downs. End of chapter 28 in Matthew says what? Jesus said to his disciples, and I will be with you to the end of time. That's the promise he has for us. So, the questions I have for you, is your faith, your trust in the Lord strong enough to allow him to rescue you from those cisterns of life? Do you see his hand upholding you even when you're in the pit, which you may find yourselves from time to time? Can impossibilities be a good place to encounter God's help and his grace? If we're open to it, yes. Remember, like Joseph, that pit, the cistern, is just a brief stopping place on the road to greatness and uplifting blessings. All right, questions or comments?
I like that positive thinking. I'm more like that these days than I was before. It doesn't do any good to have a bad attitude or something goes wrong. Clean up the mess and go forward.
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
it's happened.
Yeah,
Let yourself think about it. Overthink it or feel sorry for yourself. It really doesn't do any good.
yeah, right, right. It's kind of like a crossroads in life, you can take, well, poor me, and then pretty
Yeah.
soon it just kind of snowballs and, negative, criticism or whatever. But the other road is, okay, Lord, I don't like what's happening to me, but you've got some good things in mind for me and some blessings that I need to learn through this too, because I'm not perfect. So, yeah, and
Well,
that can
there it
make a big
goes.
difference.
You aren't perfect. Here we thought you were perfect.
Well,
I
it
was
should,
reminded of something this morning and listening to this Joseph story. Slow to anger. I don't see any anger coming. Story.
no. Joseph, we never see that expressed by Joseph. He just kind of takes it all in stride and again, it's how he reacts and responds to it is, sure, he's human. He's got these fears and worries and what's going to happen to me now that I'm sold into slavery and what's my future like? But we find there's a phrase throughout this story. It says, and the Lord was with Joseph. And to me, that is a very significant statement. And I think Joseph knew that, and that's what sustained him.
I think part of it, though, the Lord is with you, with us, if you allow Him.
Yes, yes.
That's the attitude.
It's a choice. Yes,
Exactly.
yes, it is. Yeah, and the more we're open to that, his help and presence and guidance, the better off we will be in the end.
Sleep better, that's
So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you for coming. Just want to note, we meet next week. And the following week, the last Sunday of September, the 29th, it's on your outline. I'm going to be out of town, so there's no class. So just so you know that. So I made bookings about 3 months ago to be in Colorado Springs because my daughter will be ordained as a deacon. So I need to be there for that ceremony, and yeah.
No substitute teacher?
All right.